If you're about to buy an e-bike, stop scrolling right now. These 7 models have quietly become unsellable, unrepairable, and uninsurable, and the one at number 1 could get you a criminal citation. Number 7. The Ridstar Q20. Walk into almost any independent bike shop in the country and ask them to service a Ridstar Q20, and you will probably be turned around at the counter. This is a black fat tire electric bike, 1500 watts in its standard version, sold through Amazon, Walmart, AliExpress, and the company's own website for less than $1,000. On paper, it looks like the best value in the entire category. 30 miles an hour, 20-inch fat tires, and a battery big enough for a full day of riding. Then came 2026. On the 19th of March, the Consumer Product Safety Commission published a public warning telling owners of the Q20 and the Q20 Pro to stop riding immediately. The batteries and the wiring could ignite. The agency had logged 11 separate fires, 1 burn injury, 5 reports of smoke inhalation, and more than $40,000 in property damage. 3 months later, on the 25th of June, the same agency came back with a second warning about the same machine. This time, the problem was the front wheel. 32 reports of the wheels separating from the fork while the bike was moving. 31 of those reports involved injuries, including concussions, broken bones, and deep cuts. Now, here is what separates this from an ordinary recall. There was no recall. The manufacturer, a company in Huizhou called Shinkishi Sporting Goods, simply did not respond to the agency's requests for information, not once in either investigation. American law does not let the commission force a recall without a long administrative hearing and a possible court challenge. So when a factory on the other side of the Pacific decides to ignore the letter, the strongest remaining tool is a warning notice that carries no refund, no replacement, and no obligation of any kind. So the listings stay up and the bike shops stay out of it. A mechanic who torques a Q20 fork on the workbench and hands the bike back is now holding a share of the liability for whatever happens on the next ride. Most shop owners have run that math and reached the same answer. The Q20 does not come through the door. Number 6. The Sondors Rockstar. This one is a genuinely interesting bicycle, which is what makes the story sting. The Rockstar was Sondors' first full-suspension electric mountain bike, built around a mid-drive motor and a 21 amp-hour battery, and it arrived with the same pitch that had defined the brand since 2015. Premium ambition, budget price, delivered through crowdfunding instead of a dealer network for a while that worked. The original Sondors fat bike launched on Indiegogo for around $500 and became one of the most talked about e-bikes in America. The company scaled fast. Bikes appeared in big box stores. The Rockstar arrived with real suspension and a mid-drive, and owners genuinely loved riding them. The trouble started with a motorcycle. In 2021, Sondors announced the Metacycle, a lightweight electric commuter bike that was supposed to sell for a few $1,000s. Production overran its timeline badly. Roughly 2,000 units eventually shipped, well short of what had been promised, and the specifications on the machines that did arrive fell short of the ones on the reservation page. Deliveries slowed, then stopped entirely. Reservation holders who had waited years heard nothing. By 2023, the company had run out of runway and entered receivership, and factories were left holding thousands of finished units that nobody was going to pay for. The Los Angeles headquarters closed. Support email went unanswered. The founder eventually bought the brand back and is now selling an off-road machine called the Meta AT, but the Rockstar and its stablemates were left in a strange kind of limbo. Owners describe hunting for model-specific hubs and headset parts that were never produced by anyone except Sondors and were never produced again after the collapse. A handful of independent parts sellers have built small businesses out of stocking whatever they could find. For a shop, that is the disqualifying detail. A bike is only worth putting on the sales floor if you can get the parts to fix it in 3 years. When the answer is a forum thread and a private seller's spreadsheet, the answer is no. Number 5. The Yamaha Wabash RT. This is where the story stops being about cheap imports and starts being about the industry itself. The Wabash RT is a drop-bar gravel e-bike with a Yamaha mid-drive, a 500 watt-hour battery, and the kind of build quality you would expect from a company that has been making motors since before most e-bike brands existed. Yamaha actually built the world's first mass-produced pedal assist bicycle back in 1993. The Wabash launched in the United States at around $4,099. Its sibling, the flat-bar Crosscore RC, sat near $3,000. In late 2024, Yamaha sent a letter to its North American dealers. The company was exiting the e-bike market in the region at the end of the year. The stated reasons were the post-pandemic oversupply across the bicycle industry and a general softening of demand. What followed was one of the strangest clearance events the category has seen. Wabash RTs that had listed above $4,000 appeared at dealers for around $1,679, sometimes with a spare battery included. Crosscore RCs went for roughly $1,200. Riders who understood what they were buying grabbed them. Yamaha stated it would keep providing parts, service, and customer support in the United States and honor its 5-year limited warranty. The complication is structural. Yamaha does not perform warranty service directly. Dealers do, and many of those dealers were powersports shops that sold e-bikes as a side business through the pandemic and had no reason to keep a certified e-bike technician on staff once the line was gone. So the Wabash sits in an odd category. It is a well-engineered bicycle with a real warranty on paper and a shrinking number of places willing to honor it. Yamaha still sells the model in Canada, Europe, and Japan, which means parts exist somewhere on Earth. Getting them to a workbench in Ohio is a different question entirely. Dealers learn something from this. When a manufacturer can walk away from an entire continent with a single letter, stocking that manufacturer's inventory starts to look less like a business decision and more like a bet. Number 4. The Rad Power RadWagon 4. If you followed the American e-bike boom at all, you watched this one happen in real time. Rad Power Bikes was the largest e-bike brand in North America. The company raised $25 million in 2020, followed it with $300 million in 2021, and closed that year valued at $1.5 billion. The RadWagon 4 was its flagship cargo bike, a long-tail hauler priced around $2,000 that put an entire generation of American families on electric bikes instead of second cars. It also became one of the most troubled products in the category. In November of 2022, Rad recalled the RadWagon 4 over its tires. The company had received 137 reports of tires blowing out, deflating, or separating from the sidewalls, with 8 injuries attached, including a broken wrist and a broken arm. Owners got new tires and rim strips. The second problem was worse. On the 24th of November 2025, the Consumer Product Safety Commission issued a warning covering battery packs sold with the RadWagon 4 and several other Rad models. The agency documented 31 fires and 12 reports of property damage, totaling roughly $734,000. Some of those fires happened while the battery was not charging and the bike was not in use, sitting in a garage, doing nothing. Rad refused to agree to a recall. The company told the agency that replacing every affected battery regardless of condition would put it out of business immediately, and argued that its batteries met international safety standards. Days earlier, Rad had filed a notice with Washington State warning of a possible cessation of operations as early as the 9th of January 2026. That is exactly what happened. Rad went into bankruptcy. The brand went to auction on the 22nd of January 2026, and a Florida company called Life Electric Vehicles took it for $13.2 million, closing the deal in early March. The buyer says it intends to keep selling under the Rad name and honor certain warranties under the terms of the asset agreement. But this was an asset sale, not a rescue. The company that made the RadWagon 4 no longer exists, and that leaves shops with an impossible conversation. A customer wheels in a cargo bike carrying 2 children. The battery is one of the affected packs, and the correct advice is to remove it and take it to a hazardous waste facility. Nobody is selling that bike used. Nobody is putting it on a showroom floor. Number 3. The Juiced HyperScorpion. Juiced Bikes was one of the originals. Founded around 2009 by Tora Harris, an Olympic high jumper turned engineer, working out of San Diego, the company built a reputation on performance commuters with more power and more range than anything at the price. The HyperScorpion was the loudest expression of that idea. A moped-style electric bike with a full suspension seat, motorcycle styling, and enough output to embarrass most cars off the line. It sold well. It also sold into a business that was quietly running out of air. Juiced overproduced during the pandemic boom, got hit by supply chain disruption and tariffs on the way down, and by the autumn of 2024, its assets were being auctioned to repay creditors. The whole company went for around $1.2 million, making it the largest e-bike bankruptcy the American market had seen. Customers had already noticed something was wrong. Support emails stopped getting answers, the phone line went dead, social channels went quiet, and people who had prepaid for bikes never received them. In March of 2025, the brand and its intellectual property were bought by Levi Conlow and Robbie DeZiel, the co-founders of Lectric, who chose to run Juiced as a separate operation out of Phoenix. In 2026, the name returned with a new full suspension scrambler. 2 things did not come across in that sale: existing inventory and warranty parts. Ride that again, because it is the heart of the problem. The name came back, the obligation did not. A pre-2025 Juiced warranty is, in practical terms, a piece of paper. And the HyperScorpion was built around proprietary controllers and a battery format specific to its own platform, so a shop cannot simply substitute a generic pack and send the rider home. There are independent sellers keeping some of these bikes running, and there is a real community of owners doing it well. But No retailer is going to put a bike on the floor when the warranty behind it evaporated in a bankruptcy auction and the parts bin closed with it. Number 2. The VanMoof S3. This is the one that changed how the entire industry thinks about design. VanMoof was founded in Amsterdam in 2009 by the brothers Taco and Thijs Carlier, and by the early 2020s it had become the most recognizable urban e-bike brand on earth. Flagship stores in Amsterdam, Berlin, Paris, London, Tokyo, and New York. More than $200 million raised from venture investors. The S3 was the bike that made the name, with its triangular frame, integrated lighting, automatic electronic shifting, an alarm, a GPS chip, and a cellular connection, sold at around $2,298. The philosophy was total control. VanMoof designed the stem, the handlebars, the controls, the electronics, the battery, and the electronic shifter in-house. Nothing about the bike came off a shelf. On the 17th of July 2023, the Court of Amsterdam declared the Dutch entities bankrupt. The German, British, and American units followed in August. A competitor, Cowboy, rushed out an app so VanMoof riders could save an unlock key before the servers potentially went dark, because a connected bike that cannot phone home is a very expensive frame. The brand was rescued at the end of August by Levois, a division of McLaren Applied, and the newer S6 is a genuinely different machine built with parts co-designed with large manufacturers precisely so this cannot happen again. None of that helps an S3 owner. Removing a wheel on an S3 requires VanMoof's own anti-theft nut wrench, a tool that's shipped in the box and that most second-hand buyers never receive. Individual spare parts stop being sold to customers. Repairs at the remaining service points could only happen if the specific part happened to be in stock. The market did the rest. Second-hand S3 and X3 prices in early 2026 sat roughly between 450 and 1100 euros against an original price more than double that at the top of the range. Some independent shops stepped up and learned to work on them, and third-party manufacturers began producing racks, fenders, and small components. But a bike whose electronics only its dead parent company fully understood is not a bike a dealer wants to warranty. Number 1. The Sur-Ron Light Bee X. And this is the one that is getting worse by the day, because nothing about the machine changed. The law did. The Light Bee launched in 2014 from a company in Hangzhou called Qilong Technology, and it essentially created the lightweight electric dirt bike segment. Around 120 pounds, several thousand watts, 45 miles an hour and beyond. Talaria followed a few years later, founded by former Qilong staff, and the two companies eventually ended up in a Texas courtroom over a design patent, with damages set near $13 million. For most of a decade, these machines lived in a legal gray zone. They were sold through powersports dealers and bike shops alike, marketed with language that carefully avoided the word motorcycle, and bought by enormous numbers of teenagers whose parents assumed they were buying a fast bicycle. Federal law was never ambiguous about it. A low-speed electric bicycle needs fully operable pedals, a motor under 750 watts, and a motor only top speed under 20 miles an hour. The Light Bee has foot pegs instead of pedals and fails all three tests. On the 1st of January 2026, California made that explicit. Senate Bill 586 created a new vehicle category, the off-highway electric motorcycle, defined as an electric two-wheeler with handlebars and a straddle seat that is not equipped with pedals from the manufacturer. It requires a green sticker from the DMV. The state's own off-highway vehicle bulletin named the brands directly, including Sur-Ron, Talaria, Ventus, eRide Pro, and Stark Future, and stated plainly that these machines do not meet the definition of an electric bicycle or a moped, despite years of being sold and advertised as such. Washington State moved in the same direction in 2026. Hawaii signed a law in July banning high-speed e-moto devices from public roads. Police departments in California have been explicit that these machines are not street legal without registration, a motorcycle license, and insurance that most of them cannot obtain, which leaves the retailer holding a very specific problem. The bike in the showroom is still fun, still fast, still popular. It is simply not the thing the sign above it says it is. So what actually connects these 7 machines? Every one of them was sold into a market that had not yet decided what an electric bicycle was. And now that decision is being made retroactively. California's Senate Bill 1271 took effect on the 1st of January 2026. Electric bikes, batteries, and charging systems sold in the state must now be tested by an accredited laboratory to a standard referenced in UL 2849 or EN 14194, and must carry a permanent mark showing the lab and the standard met. The old wording that let manufacturers advertise 750 watts continuous while surging far higher is gone. 750 is a ceiling now. New York City has been enforcing its own certification law since September 2023, and later amendments gave the city the power to padlock retailers who repeatedly break it, with penalties reaching $2,000 per device type. Within roughly the first year, city inspectors had visited more than 650 retailers and issued hundreds of violations. Meanwhile, the economics moved underneath everyone. Chinese-built e-bikes carried a cumulative tariff of roughly 45% in 2026, down from a peak that briefly touched far higher in 2025. Lithium battery packs jumped from 7.5% to 25%. Giant, one of the largest manufacturers on Earth, reported revenue down 21.5% in January 2026, 40% in February, and 17% in March. Ask American retailers what they will service, and the answers are remarkably consistent.